Hello, hello. I have a text here by Friedrich Nietzsche from the book Thus Spoke Zarathustra, my most favorite book of all, my most favorite fairy tale story of all, because it has something to teach. And I'm picking this one paragraph here from the book. This one here is often misunderstood, and maybe I can shed some light onto what it means, and I can also use some examples. He didn't use enough examples, and then the examples he used from his time may not be understood anymore today, in this time. But the implications of what he says still is standing. The philosophy of it is still standing today. But Zarathustra observed the folk and wondered. Then he spoke so: the human is a rope knitted between animal and superhuman, a rope over an abyss, a dangerous transgression, a dangerous on the road, a dangerous retrospection, a dangerous shuddering and standing still. What is great about the human is that he is a bridge and not a means. What can be loved about the human is that he is a transition and a demise. So a lot of people, I assume, and I already saw it on YouTube, internet, talking to people, a lot of people will misunderstand it. A lot of religious people will misunderstand this. It has been misconstructed into some kind of neo-Nazism, Nazism, nationalism, Aryanism, and so on. All misunderstandings. Some people think it is devil worshipping, and I mean the interpretations go on and on and on, and they run wild, and none of it has anything to do with Friedrich Nietzsche and his message to humanity. The human is a rope. He has the story of that acrobat. I think I talked about this in one of my former videos, and then in the past also I talked about it on my other channels. He has the acrobat who is going to walk over a rope, and the people are watching, and behind him comes a clown who is better than he is at walking over the rope, and the clown will just jump over him, fly over him. And that brings the acrobat to a fall, because his ego can't take it that someone else is better at walking over this rope. And it's a parable to what is going on with humanity itself. So the clown behind him, the jester who comes up behind him, he says, beware, I'm going to tickle your heels, move, sloths, or I'm going to jump over you. You're holding us back, you're holding me back. And so it's this comparison to what's going on with humanity itself, as the majority of humans. It's kind of like a transitional phase. It's a little bit of a transgression. It's a standing still, a treadmilling, and there are just a handful of superhumans among us, and they can fly over us mentally. And so a lot of humans, when they see someone being able to do more acrobatics with their mind, and the other people might just fly right over them in terms of caring, in terms of being a better steward, in terms of being better at taking care of things, being more responsible, having more control over their own lives, over their own bodies, over their own minds, being better observers of themselves, being better analyzers, being better philosophers, and so on, being better physically too, but that's not what he's talking about. When he's talking about the superhuman, he means the person who put altruism, the true value of ethics, completely above his own needs, and because of that, just for that very reason, he cannot become an addict or someone who falls prey to his own craving and his own aversion, his own seeking and his own retracting. He will not become too cowardly. He will not become too craving, because he puts the other above him. And that's what Friedrich Nietzsche is talking about. And he was very frustrated during his time living in Germany. He had a particular chip on his shoulder against the Germans. And later on, that was some of his books were falsified, were rewritten by his sister, because she was part of the Nazis, and he was completely against all of this. So some of the stuff that he's talking about, because he sees the things from a much broader perspective, from above. And a couple of things that he wrote that were very universal, for universal love, that wasn't sitting well with the Nazis, because they wanted to transcribe his books into making it their own message. And then they horrifically added to the misunderstanding later on of the books by Friedrich Nietzsche. Friedrich Nietzsche's books, that's the original message of Jesus Christ. And Friedrich Nietzsche even himself talked about it, and he considered himself to be the scholar of the Buddha. He considered the Buddha as the highest philosopher there is. And he said that is absolutely standing above everything, above all philosophies, above the Greek philosophers from the antique time, and above any kind of philosopher throughout history of humanity itself. So he saw that very clearly. He saw what people consider as altruism is really just a form of cowardness. So because they haven't really understood what true altruism is. True altruism is not giving in to someone else taking advantage. That's not altruism. That's also so misconstructed by so many Buddhists. Today I see it. That think that we need to just give in to those who take advantage because we have the Buddha mind, in quotation marks. So that is not what the Buddha taught. And Friedrich Nietzsche understood that very clearly, that giving in to someone who is taking advantage, who is hoarding power and money onto himself, it's basically just it's a cop-out excuse to be cowardly. That's all it is, and it is the opposite of caring and loving and giving and all of this. So to him, the superhuman, what is the superhuman? Not Arnold Schwarzenegger, the figure, the muscle, the athletic body, the whatever. Yeah, that's what the Nazis later on have misconstructed it into it. That's not what Friedrich Nietzsche means by the superhuman. Superhuman, he doesn't mean that you have to be well shaped in your body. What is the most important part, what the only thing that totally matters, is the mind, is this altruistic wisdom, knowledge, understanding, introspection, broader picture, broader vision ability. That's what he's talking about when he talks about the superhuman. What comes to mind when I talk about the superhuman today is Paul Watson. Paul Watson is the most courageous, the most caring, the most daring, and the most altruistic human there is. I don't know if this has existed before. You know, other people that come to mind is Mother Teresa and Mahatma Gandhi. But even they have not laid their bodies over baby fur seals in Newfoundland. This is new. This has been done by Paul Watson, and then some other people followed into his footsteps. And some other amazing people who learned from him. He, however, is the one who was the first person to step foot into this domain, to really be free from what other people say, be free from society, be free from other people's opinions of him, be free from fads, be free from religions, be free from any kind of social adaptation. He is just totally standing by himself, chin up, strong, confident, courageous, not out of a self-serving arrogance or something that other people might then again misconstruct it as. Because so many people, they see things through a filtered lens. They see things they cannot understand, that there is a person who does this for only one motivation. There is only one agenda, one motivation, and that is altruism, true altruism. Going out there, laying your body over a baby fur seal to protect that baby from being butchered by one of those hacker pigs, those chopping ice pick things that they use to brutally, barbarically butcher those baby fur seals that are dependent on their mothers. They do this in front of the mothers. They chop these babies apart so they can so they can skin them. Some of them are even still alive and conscious while they are skinned. Yeah. If this isn't enough, I mean, it's like, if this image of cruelty is not enough for us humans to stand there and scream and say, no, we are not going to allow this. If this is not enough, if people are not enough shaken up by that image, a lot of people are. I'm not accusing all of them, but there are a lot of people who look the other way. There are a lot of people who say, oh, nah, who just sweep it under the rug, out of sight, out of mind, walk away. They look away. They've seen it, but they choose to look away, even after they saw it, after they heard the stories and all of this. And people who still buy fur coats. That's what Friedrich Nietzsche is talking about when he talks about the human or the last human. You know, that's what he is talking about. People who wear fur, those are the last humans. Those are the ones who we need to overcome. We need to, but he doesn't mean in a way that we need to overcome them by whatever, like killing them or by putting them away or whatever. That's not what he's talking about. He's talking to each human when he talks about this. He says, what have you done to overcome him? What have you done? What is your work? Have you thought about it? Have you put your mind into it? What can you do to overcome the last human in yourself? Can you? At his time, there weren't so many people buying fur, and at this time, the entire global mindset was way back. Was way more speciesist than it is today. So we've already made it. We made progress with this as society, the whole society on Earth. In general, we made progress, and this is fantastic. But we cannot be standing still and just resting now on our accomplishments. We have to keep moving. We need to move on. And I see on the internet, obviously, I see that most people are still somewhat in that mindset that Friedrich Nietzsche is talking about, particularly those people who by fur put their own self-aggrandization and self-glorification and self-faming, into the forefront before everything else. And that's what the last human is all about. That's what we need to transcend. I use the word transcend. That sounds better than overcome, because overcoming sounds a little bit like I'm just jumping above it. I'm not really tackling the issue itself. So what we need to do is we need to dive into it, and we need to work our way through, but step for step for step. We can't be jumping from A to Z. If somebody is completely blinded by the corporate media, particularly, and the false sense of values and all of these things, the vanity values, if we can become more aware of it, as Jiddu Krishnamurti talked about, and I really recommend to people, if they want to transcend the human, the last human in themselves, if people want to transcend the last human in themselves, they need to read different things. They need to read Jiddu Krishnamurti, Mahatma Gandhi, Buddha. They need to be listening to different videos, listening to different people talk. They need to break away from that, what causes them to become more and more the last human, and they need to orient themselves on that, what makes them become the superhuman, what makes them move in that direction. It doesn't mean we have to set the highest goals of goals, but what we need to do is we need to get on the right path, at least. That is the thing. We need to put our trains onto the right rails. That's what's important. That's the most important thing, and most people are not on the right rails. And if we can put ourselves on the right rails, then things will move progressively forward. Then things will move much more rapidly and will be much more moving towards progression, towards making life on earth better for every single individual, including the people who now think that they somehow feel better if they take. If you learn how to give, if you learn the pleasure of giving love, if you learn the pleasure of giving love, you will not look back. You will not go back to the old ways. You will not think that taking is better. Because when you really learn to give, and that's something that Tony Robbins mentioned in his 30-day audio program, when he said the way he taught his son altruism, he made him link up tremendous joy with it. So what he did is he bought him a bunch of helium balloons, and when his son was like 3 or 4, and then he said, wouldn't you like to share this joy now that you got from those helium balloons, holding them in his hand? Wouldn't you like to share that with other people and make other people feel good, and go out there and give everyone on that marketplace a balloon? So little boy went out and he started to hand out one balloon after another, and he saw the joy on people's faces. This touching joy, this being deeply touched in their hearts by that little boy giving them a balloon, and being happy and rejoicing with them. And it's this rejoicing of true love, you know. That's what true love is. It's rejoicing with the happiness of the other being, dog, horse, or human. It doesn't matter. We're all made out of the same material. The horse may not know what to do with the helium balloon, okay? The dog might have more fun with it, busting it apart, right? But that's how a dog is. Dog plays with things. And a human will take it in the hand and enjoy looking at it. But it's all the same. We all have the same need to connect and rejoice with someone else's happiness. If I'm happy, my dog is happy. It makes him happy when I'm happy. You know, he wants me to be happy. He doesn't want me to cry and be depressed. And when I make and it is very interesting, I talked about this before. When I have heavy feelings, he sighs. He makes sighing sounds. And he breathes heavily. And every single time, because he feels it. He has this, I don't know whether he smells different chemistry, or whether there's an energy field that becomes different. I don't know, or both. So dogs are definitely way more perceptive than humans, and they had to be, because that had to do with the way they were. Their grandfathers, the wolves, were living, so they had to be highly perceptive, or they would not have made it. So, but the dogs today, of course, they have it better. They don't need to be perceptive, but it's still there. This is still a rudiment from the wolf ancestors, you know, to be highly perceptive of each other, in order to take care of each other, in order to read each other's thoughts and feelings and needs, and to know what to do, who to care for. When somebody is depressed, the other one will sit next to them. They'll just sit with them, without talking, of course. And that's what people unlearned. They talk too much. I talk too much. So if we want to really help each other, we sit with the other. We just sit there. We're just there. We're just present. You know, what Thich Nhat Hanh is talking about. I am here for you. You know, I reach you my hand. I'm here for you, to take you by the hand if you need it. That's that message that goes through all animals. on earth, through all earthian beings. They all have that message. They all have that tremendous love to give to each other, and across the species, beyond species, from one species to another. They have that giving and that contact and that present to give. I'm here for you. Take this balloon or take this carrot and chew it, the horse. And the horse will be nodding his head and will be very grateful for that carrot. And very happy. And he will come up and he will nuzzle you for that. Right here on the cheek. Loving beings. Sensitive and gentle. And the dogs, they will snuggle up with you. And they will kiss you. And they will lick your face and mouth and in extreme, infinite gratitude for kindness. So this is what we need to come back to. I would not even call it superhuman. I would call it the super earthian, because the animals are already super earthians. Most of them are. There are some aggressive ones, of course, even among the blue jays. There is one dictator. He's also the biggest and he's the fattest of all. He gets most to eat. And that happens in the wild, of course. But the dictators are not the super earthian. The super earthian is, maybe you want to call it the omega, but it's not. What I'm talking about is not someone who is submissive and be misunderstood as noble because of it. Submissive is more like cowardly, right? That's not what Friedrich Nietzsche means. He means humble out of inner strength, humbleness out of putting the other above himself. And most earthian beings have that. There are always some that are meaner and that are not the super earthian. And among humans, a whole lot. There's a whole lot of them that are not the super earthians. Okay, those are called the last humans by Friedrich Nietzsche. So the superhuman is a super earthian in human form. And we as humans, we have a lot of capabilities with our hands, arms, legs, feet, and a somewhat functioning brain. We have a lot of responsibility because of this. The whales have more intelligence, but they don't have the arms to make machines with, or shoot someone with a machine gun, or poison the planet. That is what humans do because of this combination, because they are not the superhuman, they are not the super earthian yet. And that's why Friedrich Nietzsche is teaching the superhuman. I teach you the superhuman. The human is something that shall be overcome. What have you done to overcome him, is what he said. So we have to keep this in mind. And when he talks about the transition from human to superhuman, he has this transition, I talked about this before also, to the transition phase from A to Z is you start out as the human or the last human, the one who does not take responsibility. Stand still where you are, do a U-turn, and go the other direction. Slowly, you can't make jumps. Just go on the right rail. You make the U-turn from anywhere you are. You make the U-turn, you go onto the right rail, the path towards altruism and true love. True love is love for all earthian beings, animals and people, equally much. That's what we need to become aware of. No more hunting, no more fur buying. Give the fur coats away. Give it to charities. Give it to the right charities so that they can really make something out of it. So that they can really use it to give it to a homeless person. Someone who needs a coat in the winter so he doesn't freeze to death. So put it to use. Don't buy any more fur items. Slowly become a vegetarian and eventually a vegan. Do no more harm to other living beings. Be no more a contributor to the suffering, the tremendous suffering that is going on this planet. I've already mentioned many of those issues in my videos. Many of these things. I don't go into real hard details because I spare you from them. But I tell you, people, the hard details are out there. And if you care, if you have a heart, you will stop where you are right now. And you go on the right track, on the right train rail towards love, altruism, and giving. True love. Go onto the right path. Don't expect too much from yourself and then relapse. Just go onto the right path and strive towards progression. Infinity, true love. Okay, you can call it God if you want to. I call it Blue God. You can call it Lord Vishnu if you want to. Jesus Christ is not there yet. Okay. He's just a messenger. He has always tried to make the best out of it. He's on the right path, just like everyone else who will be on the right path. So he is on the path from human to superhuman. Other people are already superhumans. The Buddha, Paul Watson, Ingrid Newkirk, Peter Hammarstedt, and many more. Okay. I see it in their faces already. I see by the way they look. I see it in their eyes. I see by the way their eyes, their eye muscles, the eye muscles around the eyes are formed. I see by the way they use these eye muscles, how they feel. Another one who comes to mind is Simone Reyes. It's another superhuman. I see it in her eyes. I see it in all of their eyes. Their eyes look into the distance. They don't look from A to B. They don't look into shallowness. Their eyesight is directed into infinity because they put others before themselves. And to them, that is the greatest joy because they know and they have experienced it. And their brains are set up that way to experience this. But every single person can get to that point. At least what each person can do is to get on that path towards this state of mind. And some people might call it enlightenment. I don't like that word enlightenment. Enlightenment is a misused word, and it has been commercialized, and it is completely abused by gurus, and it's a status symbol. It's not. It is the opposite of that what Friedrich Nietzsche is talking about when he talks about the superhuman. The person who calls himself enlightened, the person who says, I no longer need to strive forward, I have reached my goal, that person is the last human that Friedrich Nietzsche is talking about. Because then you become a shuddering and a standing still. The moment you think you have reached your goal, you are shuddering and standing still. And you are a dangerous retrospection. Okay? You are no longer moving. You have to move. You have to grow. Life, the infinite universe, is a continuous flow. Yeah, you can be standing still, and then things will throw you over, you know, because you are in resistance. Or you go with that flow. If you ride a horse, if you go with the flow of the horse's movements, you will not fall off. If you are stiff like a board on that horse, I've seen people like this also in movies, and I see right away who doesn't know how to ride a horse, and who's never sat on a horse, and who's afraid, and who is not in tune with that animal. See it right away. Those people fall off. They get thrown off that horse in a heartbeat. The horse doesn't like it. The horse will buckle, and the person will flip up like a piece of wood, and will end up somewhere in the acre of agriculture, in a big bowl. And that's also how life is, you know. If you are in resistance, to true love, eventually, some people call it karma, things will shake you up so badly. And I'm not saying this to scare anybody. This is just the course of flow of things, you know. It's all part of the universal flow. These people think right now that they're taking, and they're enjoying it, the taking. They don't first of all, they don't understand what they're missing out on. They're missing out on love. But not only that, they actually suffer underneath. That's why they are in that state of taking. There's a suffering underneath that's going on, and there is a retrospection, and there's a resistance to the flow of life in that moment, and it will catch up. It's not a punishment. It just will catch up. It's like, you know, if you're standing in a river, and if you're not going with the river, as Esther Hicks uses always this example, you know, go with the flow of the river. If you're standing still in the river, eventually you get tired, and the river, and you will not be able to withstand the flow of the river, and the river will throw you over, and you might hit your head on a rock. So that's what, like, when people are stiff and unflexible, a lot of old people, and then all of a sudden they get thrown over when they're about to die. They get thrown over, and they face this incredible horror all of a sudden, like somebody on a bad trip, you know. Why do people trip bad? You know? Terence McKenna talks about this. Why do people have horror trips? Because the ego is not capable of taking in that what they are all of a sudden be able to see. There's a discrimination ribbon in our brains. It is a formation in the brain that between the hippocampus and the neocortex that filters out information perception. They have done tests on this. Men are particularly good at that. They filter out, and that has to do with evolution. The women are more capable of seeing more, more broader spectrum. around them. They see the nuances, they see energies and all of this. They're way more psychic. And there's a reason for it, because the women were the ones who were taking care of everybody. They were the psychologists, they were the menders of society, while the men were out there to protect the herd, the group. So when people filter out things, and the ego particularly causes this to be much stronger. Some people filter out so much more than others. Out of the ego and the discrimination ribbon, action becomes stronger with the action of the ego. So that goes hand in hand. The ego makes that ribbon stronger. And then when people, so for example, when somebody is a fundamentalist Christian and they are sexist, homophobic, racist, fascist, and so on. Yeah. And then finally they are 90 years old and their body functions are no longer holding up. Just like somebody standing in a flowing river, the river will hit them, and eventually the strength will loosen up and the person can no longer hold his resistance towards the water flowing at him, will fall over and hit himself. He's in resistance like this, and almost like completely firm and clamped, and then the water finally throws him over because his strength is no longer there. He falls over like a board, and then he'll hit himself. And that's the same with old people, so they're stiff like this, and they're clenching onto their egoic belief system that keeps the ego strong and going, and the ego keeps that belief system going, that old belief system that is not in the flow of life. And then their strengths are failing because they're getting old, and then all of a sudden they are thrown over, like the river throws them off. The river of life throws them over, and then they see for the first time the whole spectrum of all these nuances, of all this in between good and evil, as Friedrich Nietzsche always says. So they all of a sudden they will see all of it beyond good and evil. They will all of a sudden see everything that is beyond judgment, and that information is so perceived as such a tremendous threat to the ego. Same happens when somebody is on a bad trip. They see these things, they're not prepared for it, they have never been prepared for it, they never went with the flow of the river, they were always stiff. And the acid trip or whatever they tried, mushrooms. So any of these substances, ayahuasca, mushrooms, psilocybin mushrooms, any kind of plant that is hallucinogenic, like oleander or whatever, that will all of a sudden put them in touch with this. They see the nuances, they understand the concept. They see the concept of love looking at them. That is so frightening for the ego. That's why I see a lot of people hating hippies. For it's the same thing. They are so in their warmongering way. That's the only way they feel safe. It's out of fear. Warmongering. My husband used to have a whole wall full of weapons. I had him take these weapons down. See, and this is the Buddha, and this is love. This is love. This is true love. So when they see hippie, these warmongering people, they get scared. Their ego becomes scared. So they have to be attacking that hippie. They have to be humiliating the hippie, because that's the only way they can think they get control again over the situation. Because the hippie is obviously the jester who flies above them, okay? And that threatens to bring them down, like the acrobat that fell from the rope. So this is very good, these parables that Friedrich Nietzsche is describing in this fairy tale. So Friedrich Nietzsche has these 3 transforming stages from last human or human towards the superhuman. What are these stages? He says, first the human becomes a camel, a load-bearing animal. It's a symbol. These are symbols. What does the camel do? The camel takes a lot on his back, So he's really becomes almost like a slave, That's when people are first looking into philosophies, and then they get sucked up by religions, and they become a slave to someone else in a way, it's all a misunderstanding yet, that stage, It's like they want to do good, but then they end up becoming a slave to this guru, or, they become load-bearing, or they read a lot and they don't know what to make out of all of this, and they're overwhelmed. The next stage in that evolution is the camel will go into the desert and will become a lion. So that's when the camel says, enough, I am uproaring now against this burden. I'm shaking that burden off my back. I'm shaking the religion off my back. I'm becoming independent. I'm becoming a raging lion. I'm becoming a thinker and shaker. I'm becoming wild again. I'd rather be a predator than be a slave. Okay, that's the stage of the lion as a symbol. Lion as a symbol for that mental development. That is not the superhuman yet. To be a predatory no-sayer, but it's an important stage, I would call the lion stage the atheist. The atheist is in that lion stage, who has shaken off the entire load of his back, but he still hasn't understood the last meaning of the superhuman. And then he goes on and he develops himself into a child. Why does he use child? Because the inner child, as many people say, the inner child is, the child in us is still the innocent being that we really are. Some people will say that our souls, our baby souls often, who are still in a transition to learn, the inner child, that what we originally were when we came into this body, into the first stages of this body, because my body today is not the body anymore that it was 49 years ago. So obviously, the cells completely get renewed and everything. And the mass grows and into out of proportions. And but that's when we were in our original stages. That's when we were still innocent. That's when we were the child. We were not processed yet by society, We were not refined. We were not cookie cutter imprinted into our roles that society has given to us. So girls and boys were still children. They were not women and men. They were not playing roles. They were also not playing roles. They were not driven by hormones. They were not driven by society's role pressure and so on. And all the other things, the other burdens that later this adult neurotic thinking has put onto children when they were growing up. So the time before that is what he's talking about when he says the lion has to become the child. So once he's the child, he is becoming the superhuman. That is the ground, fertile ground, that is set for becoming the superhuman, the child that is beyond concepts, because the infinitive universe is not a concept, it's not a thought construct, it is everything and more, because everything doesn't exist. Everything has a finality to it. So there is no finality. Infinity is infinite possibilities, infinite things, infinity in everything. Okay. A child is still in that stage, and that's also the stage of the superhuman. Infinity, no boundaries, no. What I mean by boundaries in this situation is no boundaries to learning, no boundaries to understanding, no conceptualizing. This all conceptualizing is part of our learning process in order to orient ourselves in this here and now, of course. But infinity is beyond all of this. It goes beyond all of this. Some people call it God, some people call it Krishna, some people call it Vishnu, some people call it the Christian God, which the Christian God is a misunderstanding of the concept infinity altogether. Yeah. So, and all these other figurines that have been made in this to explain that, that's that what is beyond our understanding. Yeah? What is beyond our understanding is not a person, it's not a figurine. And again, our concept of it, no matter how elaborate it may be, it will never grasp this, because that's what its nature is. It elopes all of this. It is infinite, and because it's infinite, infinity, it just is. Here's the blue sky. That's why I call it blue God. I mean, right now it's covered up by clouds, but you go up and you go up into infinity, and it just keeps going. That is what infinity is. It just is all and everything and beyond everything, because and more and more and more and more, just endlessly more, infinitively more. It's all and infinitively more. Okay. And so we need to stop putting a figurine as a representative for this infinity into it. Yeah. Allah fits it more, but Allah is, because it comes out of the word al, all, is a misunderstanding too, because all implies an end. So, and there is no end. It's infinity. Therefore, it cannot be called Allah or all or everything. It cannot be called that. It's infinity. It's an 8 on the side. So it elopes all religions, all philosophies, all conceptualizations that humans have ever tried to attempt. That doesn't mean we shouldn't try to attempt it. It's very good to do that. It's good for our brains. It's good for us, good for our minds to be diving into this and to thinking about it, talking about it, writing about it, learning about it, but never stands still or stuck at any of those points. And that's what Friedrich Nietzsche's books are also in depth discussing, is that eventually, and he's showing it in his own thought processes, from a teenager all the way to the 66-year-old man at his deathbed when he was dying from syphilis. He was showing, and the syphilis coming in particularly, to highlight that very thought process, to exaggerate it into a much more caricaturesque form than he could have ever portrayed it as if he had not become sick. So the illness was aiding him in a way in expressing himself to the public of what philosophy really means, that ultimately, and that's also the evolution he describes in the Zarathustra, like the young man, the 30-year-old, all the way to when he's old, and he going through all these stages. First he's looking in the wrong places for people listening to him. Nothing is done because he's running his head against a brick wall. Then finally he's finding some people who are willing to listen to him. Then he's telling them, don't follow me, follow yourself. I'm just a messenger. Find out for yourselves. Go out into life and find out for yourself. So what matters is that people get on the right path, striving towards becoming superhuman, super earthians, or super existences. Let's put it that way. Because there are probably very supreme existences somewhere else, way beyond our solar system, maybe within our solar system, so who knows. But that's what Friedrich Nietzsche is talking about when he talks about this super. Super means above, up, higher, more noble, altruistic. Okay? So altruistic, the meaning of life is altruism, true love, which is true joy. Your own existence, your own biological vessel that carries you. Be good to all of this, and then we can make a paradise on earth. Okay, so be on that path towards it and keep on striving and learning and growing and expanding. Then you're in the flow of life, and then you're doing what is good for you and good for all, good for the greater good. That's what the superhuman means, okay, is to strive towards altruism. And some people are already in the stage of superhuman, but they don't stand still either. That is also what the superhuman is all about. The superhuman is a continuous learning process. The superhuman will never stand still, will always continue to expand himself, herself, will continue to learn, will continue to strive towards making life good for the others. She or he will derive great joy from seeing others happy. Not in order to feel the joy, but to see the others being taken care of. To tend to their children, which is all beings. And then, as Ben Goertzel said, the universe will be giggling in joy, and that's what we want to get to. That's where we're moving towards. So let's get onto that path. Take care.